Oh, sorry. Yep. Bye. Yeah. Yeah. You.
Hi.
What was your name?
Caroline.
Caroline. Sorry, Caroline. I
Jones,
can't see you properly.
I think this has been going around in my head, so it may come out completely wrong. But what I was trying to get to is years ago, I felt that because I've been abused and sexually abused, so my now understanding is that I've attracted, obviously, abusive men. And
well, just be very. Firstly, I need to stop you there. You got to be very careful with this understanding. It'd be better.
Sorry, I was meaning. Obviously, how you were talking about men this morning. I should have said that. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I just want to this whole thing that I attracted abusive men. I just want to address that comment first,
Okay.
and then we can continue with your question. Is that all right, Caroline?
I'm not too sure what that is, but I'll see how it goes. Thank you.
Well, do you want to state your question first, and then we'll go back to this point? Or
I think she not quite sure what your question is about.
No, I'm not. I'll just finish what I was saying. So I've attracted men in the past, and I couldn't see the behaviour what I was obviously attracting.
Yeah.
And I felt I'd found my soulmate, and I'm still not too sure.
Yeah.
And it was a very, very different feeling. It wasn't sexually from, my genitals sort of thing.
Yeah.
It was, my heart opened and it quite shocked me. I'd never felt that.
Yeah.
And he actually felt the same.
Okay.
And since that day, I don't think I've had a day where I've not felt something about him.
Yep.
And ex-boyfriends, I'd always... Within a week, I could have forgotten them and not felt them and not thought about them. And even when I try to forget this feeling, it just whoosh comes back in, and it's like, oh God, it sends me potty.
So is this someone you've known all your life, or?
No, just probably the last 16 years.
Okay.
Since I wanted to know about soulmates, when I heard you speak for the first time about soulmates.
Yeah.
But I'm not too sure whether that's true. I desired it, but it was more, I can't get him out of my head and my brain, and it drives me bonkers.
Because normally you could be able to get him out of your head if it was somebody else.
Well, it's just body. I can feel him around me, and I want to understand
is he in spirit, or is he on earth? He's on earth?
Yeah, he's on it, yeah.
Yep. So
it was, what... How can I get rid of it?
Why do you want to get rid of the feeling?
I don't really. It's quite beautiful.
Yeah.
It's really, really beautiful. But if it is an addiction, or what I was worried about hearing you this morning is if it's spirits throwing that feeling on me, then that's so unloving to actually connect with that, because it can't be very nice for him if we're not soulmates, that it feels like a loop. So if I'm getting that projection from a spirit, and then I'm projecting at him, and then I've started to stop it and like, I don't want this feeling, I don't want to do this, I don't want it to go on a loop.
I understand what you're saying.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, but not really. But yeah.
Oh.
No, I understand completely what you're saying. I'm just in terms of answering your question, there's a few things we got to look at first. Firstly, the issue of being abused. Let's look at that, and also look at dealing with that, shall we say? So let's start there. So your half of the soul has some areas in your past, which you've discussed with me a bit, haven't you? Where you've been sexually abused, right?
I didn't realise it at the time, but then I went into it and realised it when I was a little girl, my dad. But I totally blocked it out, didn't have a clue.
Which most people do.
Yeah.
Yeah, most people do.
This is why I want to talk about it, because probably a lot of people don't know that either, do they? And people just close it down. And
Correct.
I've not really heard a lot of talks about sexual abuse at a young age and how to
We've talked a lot about it, yeah, because we've had a lot of people we've met who have had different issues of sexual abuse that they've had to deal with.
Yeah. So I was
It's a
about
very common
40
thing.
before I realised that I had.
Yeah, it's a very common thing, of course.
Yeah.
Isn't it? Because
Yeah.
there is a lot of sexual injuries on earth, and therefore a lot of abuse is going to happen. And it's more common, obviously, for women than men, but it's still very common. Yep. Okay, so the abuse, what the abuse does, and I don't want to talk about the abuse itself. What I want to do is talk about what it does to you. Does that make sense? So what it does to you with regard to your relationship with the gender of the person who abused you. So like if a woman had abused you, then these feelings would be probably towards women and yourself. If a man's abused you, there'll be feelings towards the man and yourself in relation to men, right? So depending on the gender of the abuse, of the abuser, you will have created, through the process of getting abused, you will have created inside of your soul some feelings, right? In the relationship with how you see yourself. So firstly, it's how you see yourself. And also then how you see that gender. So in this case, men, it was a man?
Yes.
Yes. I know it's a man, I was just saying. It's a man, yes.
Yes.
And so the how you feel about men generally is going to be influenced by this abuse. Now, it depends, doesn't it, on how you react to the feelings that were generated from the abuse, the grief. So this abuse has caused grief, and then it depends on how you react to the grief as to what you will then do. So if you react to the grief by getting sort of angry about it, trying to, you're afraid of feeling it, so you get into a state of anger. So there's obviously an intermediate stage in there of fear. But if you get into a state of anger, then you might feel very angry with men all the time, right? But that hasn't been your pattern, has it?
No, I've been very quiet because I've not got angry. I've got angry internally.
Correct. So there's the second thing where this anger is actually at yourself.
Yes.
And blame of yourself. Now,
not understanding things, getting confused, not knowing who to trust.
Yep. Now, this blame of self in all these different areas causes the blame of self is the thing that causes the attraction. You follow me? To certain types of men who are prone to blame you rather than themselves. Right? So it's not actually the abuse that has caused the attraction. It's not like you're saying, it's not like we're saying, I've been abused and now I'm going to attract more abuse. That's not how it works. What happens a lot is the women who have been abused frequently, they start blaming, all their anger is upon self. Now, the problem with dumping a lot of anger on self is that it opens up the ability for people who are also angry with women to take their anger out on you because you're already angry with yourself. Does that make sense to you?
Totally. That's what I'm attracting right now. Yeah.
That's right.
And we could say attracted to.
You're attracted to even.
Yeah.
Because you're blaming yourself. You think that it's normal to blame you.
Which is what I've always had. People have done that, so I didn't know any different, and they made me believe. And that's what you were talking about early this morning, isn't it? That's what happens. You're believed that you're wrong, that you've been abused, but actually it's the abuser that's the doing wrong. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
And what he's doing is he's taking advantage of the fact that you're going to blame yourself for how he treats you. He's taking advantage of that, right? So that shows you his bad condition, his dark bad condition, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Rather than your own. Your own is in a state of blaming yourself. And then he says, right, this woman's blaming herself, so I can get away with a lot with this woman. I can treat her badly emotionally, I can treat her badly sexually, I can demand things from her, I can make her feel bad about herself, and she'll just keep blaming herself and give me what I want, which is power and control over her and other things like that, sex maybe too, and she gives me all the things I want, right? And so it's the tendency to blame yourself, which is a lack of love of self, which causes them to be attracted to you, right?
Yeah.
So you're right with that,
So,
Seppa?
and God didn't design the law that once you're abused, that you just get abused forever.
No.
Until you feel
It's not like that at all.
That's not God's intention. That's not God's desire. So it's just very important that we understand God's law does not want you to be harmed, whether it's sexually, physically, verbally. Yeah.
Anyway at all. However, what happens if you look at the general condition of the world? Most people in the world take advantage of others when they can. Isn't that true?
Yeah.
There's very few people on earth who recognise they could take advantage of you and don't. Right? Because most people are in a poor condition of love. They recognise they can take advantage of you and they do. Right? And that demonstrates their poor condition of love. So these men who take advantage of your blame of self are in a very poor condition of love, and therefore they are attracted to you blaming yourself. You follow me?
Yeah.
Yep. Now, in the process of this occurring, those men, let's draw them, I'll draw them as well. Of course, they are connected to their own soul, you could say, or their own half of the soul. But you can also see, it's not, I've just got to be careful of how I draw the men, perhaps.
It's anatomically correct.
Anatomically correct. So male. So this is them, and they obviously have an injury where they're prepared. It's a dark injury, so therefore I'm going to draw it in this sort of red colour. They're prepared to blame the women for a lot of things, which means that they've grown up with a mother who's blamed herself for a lot of things, and also given them the feeling that they shouldn't blame themselves for anything, right? And so those men are going to be attracted to your life because the anger that you feel about what happened to you is focused on yourself. Like you're saying to yourself, I'm to blame for it. And in fact, these kind of men who abuse women also do believe that you are to blame for it as well. They will even say that. Abusers often say to the children they abuse, oh, that's because you wanted that. You wanted this. You know, they say things like that. And these kind of men as adults often say the same thing, but you like that. You like me being a bit rough with you. You know, you like us having fights, and you like us, you know, you like me being a bit bossy with you and being sexually demanding with you. It turns you on. And to some degree it sort of does, because the injury in the soul is to blame yourself. And so when somebody else blames you, it opens you up emotionally and also energetically to their projections. And so you can even get sexually aroused by somebody blaming you, which is unfortunate, but it's just a part of that injury. So, if you don't deal with your blame of self, which I need to say your attractions are showing you still feel this way, aren't they? Yeah. So your attractions are still showing you that you do have this tendency to blame yourself. And this is why I latched onto the words as well, because the words, even the words a person uses frequently show that the feeling still exists, right? So there's this tendency to blame oneself within you, saying, I attracted it, like I'm to blame for it. Like, no, all you're responsible for is the fact that you haven't felt your grief about it yet. And that's caused you to have this angry suppression of your grief and to use blame as a way of suppressing your grief. If you blame yourself, you can see the dynamic. If you psychologically blame yourself for what happened, then you don't have to grieve what happened. And this kind of grief is quite gut-wrenching kind of grief. And so you can store that grief rather than feeling it if you blame yourself, right? So this is why often we desire to blame ourselves. And then on top of that, the men who abuse you want to blame you for it as well. So there's an extra motivation to blame yourself as well. And so it's very common for most people who've been abused to blame themselves for the abuse. Now, the problem with that is that this grief hasn't gone, and I've still got a strong desire to blame myself for what happened to me. So what kind of man's going to be attracted to me or attractive to me? This is something you don't want to face.
Somebody that's not, that won't treat me nicely.
Yeah. If you look at your history, you can see
abandon
that's true.
me and not be there and say that they love me and I'm your soulmate, but then obviously actions don't follow their words, which is what I'm kind of...
Now, if the man is even your soulmate, can you see that unless you heal this, you're not going to know, because you're already in a state of attracting a man who's going to take advantage of your blame self. Unless you get to this grief and stop blaming yourself at all for the abuse, can you see you're going to be feeling more attracted to a man who blames you, and you're going to be more emotionally open to the man who blames you unless you feel this grief. Now, if this man is your soulmate, as you claim, the one that you know about...
I don't know. Yes, you're right. I do claim he is my soulmate.
Correct, you do.
I do claim it. I say it all the time. But
exactly.
Then I'm not being humble.
Okay.
I'm not being humble in what, like you said yesterday, I'm not humble to know whether I'm right or wrong, and that's my problem.
Well, you do feel you're right.
Doesn't mean I am right.
Because otherwise you wouldn't say it, right? So you do feel he is, but while you have this, you are going to be very prone to attracting men who want to blame you. And they might even say they love you and care about you, just like an abuser would, by the way. You think about a lot of abuse happens not violently, but I love you and this is why I'm touching your private bits, type of thing. You know, I'm just pleasuring you. That kind of thing that a lot of these guys say to their victims, right? In a way, they're saying the same to you and then blaming you for not having the relationship or, sorting out the relationship. But again, the detraction is to blame, is to this desire you have to blame yourself. Now, that is all avoidance of this big grief. The desire to blame yourself is an avoidance of the grief. You will only grieve when you understand the truth, which is you're not to blame. And once you start feeling you're not to blame, then you'll have something to cry about. Once you believe you're to blame, you are switching off your grief.
I felt very blamed for a lot of things for a long time, really. And coming here these last few days.
We haven't seen each other for a while, have we? And
no, and so that's great. Thank you. Thank you for coming, and thank you for that for yesterday. It was really amazing.
It's our pleasure, Carolyn. But can I just finish this here? So what I'm saying to you though is that the person you're thinking is your soulmate, even if he is your soulmate, he is obviously attracted to you blaming yourself, and that's a problem. Because it doesn't matter whether he's your soulmate or not. If he's attracted to you blaming yourself, then whatever relationship you may set up with him, it's damaged from the beginning. Yeah. And can you see, unless you get rid of the grief that causes the anger to blame yourself, unless you get rid of that grief, and also work through why you want to get angry with yourself rather than feel that grief, which is all about your fear of how big that grief is.
Okay.
Right? Yeah. Unless you deal with that, then whether he's your soulmate or not, you're going to be attracting a man who's going to have a strong tendency to blame you. Now, if he turns out to be your soulmate, can you see that's going to cause you a lot of damage? right, if you allow him to have a relationship with you without you dealing with this, it's going to cause you a lot of damage, because he's going to start blaming you for things in your relationship, and you're going to take on that blame. And if he is your soulmate, you're going to be more open to taking on that blame from him than anybody else. And that's going to make your life very hard.
It's been very hard since I've last seen you. It's been very hard. I've lost everything.
Yeah. So it's very important that forget about him for a moment. So I'm saying forget about your soulmate, if he is your soulmate, for a moment, which I know sounds a bit confronting, because this is your dynamic, and unless you deal with that dynamic, any relationship you have with him is going to be tainted.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
And the problem with that is you're not going to be truthful with him because you're blaming yourself. When he is to blame, you're not going to be truthful with him about him being to blame for something, for some irresponsible, unloving thing he did. And that's going to cause you to enter this dynamic that even if he is your soulmate, you're going to have a very bad relationship with him. Now, of course, he could choose to deal with that feeling, couldn't he? But I'm saying this to you because you can't control what he does.
No, I can't.
You're not going to be able to control him for the rest of your existence, even though he's your soulmate. A lot of people think, I get my soulmate in my life and I'll be able to get good control of him. And that's not the way it is at all, as anybody who's met their soulmate will tell you. So what needs to happen is he needs to sort himself out too as to why he's attracted to this. Now, to you blaming yourself. Now, the man you're talking about has no awareness of himself in this regard. None at all.
He doesn't even believe in personal development. So
correct.
He doesn't.
Is he going to do this?
No.
No. He's not going to do it unless you deal with it yourself. And then whenever he tries to interact with you, you'll be able to know this is why. You'll be able to be direct with him. He's not going to do it in his current state. Now, one day in the future, that might change through all sorts of things, because God's trying to lead him to truth just as much as he's trying to lead you to it.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, he's in a very shut down state in terms of taking personal responsibility for his life. And so the reality is that he's probably unlikely going to do it, very soon, unless you make this change. And then, if he is your soulmate, he'll feel pretty confronted by the change. You follow me?
Yeah.
If he is your soulmate. If he's not your soulmate, he won't be bothered by it at all.
And you'll know.
You'll know
he's not your soulmate when you
deal with this.
The reality is you can't know who your soulmate is while you've got that still in you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So
what could you just go back and explain that why in previous ex-boyfriends I would forget about them within a week or 10 days, but this feeling won't shift and it won't go. And if the law of attraction will bring me his initials or a smell or something, it's constant and it can be really ramped up.
You're not in a relationship with him?
Pardon?
Are you in a relationship with him?
No, I haven't spoken to him for 3 years, 4 years, something like that.
Yep.
So
why would you think that might be happening?
Well, I'm just questioning. I would convince myself before I came here today, he's my soulmate. I get this feeling from him. It's just wonderful. It drives me mad. But in reality, when I listen to what you've said today, is it spirits just pumping me with the feelings to keep away from the grief?
Well, yeah, if you look at this dynamic of what you're trying to achieve, which is blaming yourself to avoid your grief, right? That's what you're trying to achieve, to avoid this big grief because it's painful, right? Trying to avoid that. And the spirits know that while you blame yourself, they can arrange your life so that men like this are attracted to you.
Or you're
attracted to them. And they can set up sexual liaisons for you to go with the kind of men that they feel themselves to be. And if they give you those particular feelings, that all they've got to do is say, he's your soulmate, he's your soulmate, he's your soulmate, and give you feelings of openness towards them. You say you feel him around you all the time. This man isn't feeling at all. Is he? Is he feeling at all?
It was quite interesting because when we first met, he actually said, "What are you feeling?" And I would say he's the most person that's talked about feelings, but he's obviously not, because otherwise. So,
what are these true spirits? If these spirits are around you, what are they trying to do?
They're trying to make me still stay in the same dynamic.
Yeah.
But for me, it felt like an antenna I had got. I had an antenna on my head, and I was always like this. I was probably looking for the one. And then when I met him, it's like it fell off, and I don't have any attraction to anybody else.
You were looking for someone to help you with your grief, which is not the same as looking for the one.
Okay.
You're looking for someone to help you with your grief.
Okay.
Now, people want to take advantage of that. You blame yourself for what happened, and it helps you avoid your grief. But the blame of self means that spirits can come along and help you blame yourself for a lot of things, which you do, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you understand this dynamic, but you're not understanding what it attracts. Carolyn.
Say that again. Last word.
You understand. You sort of get what I've just explained here.
Yeah.
But you don't get what it attracts. What does it attract? You blaming yourself, what does it attract?
I'm assuming it's spirits because it isn't a physical person, because I don't allow any other man in.
I'm saying physical or spiritual, I don't care. What does it attract? What kind of person?
I'm not very loving person, kind person, abusive person.
Yes, that's what it attracts.
Yeah.
Yep. So that would apply whether they're spirits or people.
Yeah.
Would it not?
Yes.
Okay. So if you are disconnected from God yourself, and if you're not, practicing principles yourself and not morally connected to those principles yourself, which to a large degree over the last 15 years you haven't
been. I agree, yeah.
Right? Then, of course, that this particular dynamic that's occurring in yourself is going to attract people who want to abuse you spiritually. How do they do that? They get you in a dynamic with somebody on earth where you blame yourself more.
But actually this is quite tricky, because you're not having the interaction with the man. He's still a fantasy at this point. You haven't actually spent time with him in a relationship. So that, for these spirits, that's kind of handy. Because if you think about all your ex-boyfriends, you got to sleep with them, you got to live with them, and then you're like, oh, now, see ya.
Yeah.
That's why you didn't think of them afterwards. But this guy, he's still like an idea yet to come in the future. And
that you can stay in an imaginary place with.
Yeah.
And open yourself to sexual energy coming from these spirits, a sexual exchange with those spirits.
And it's interestingly, in the last month or 6 weeks, I've actually kind of thought, no, I don't want that sexual projection at me. I felt that.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether it was about the time I was thinking of coming to see you again, but I just thought, no.
This guy is not aware of sexual projection at you at all. So where's the sexual projection coming from?
He describes it that he felt I was his soulmate when he met.
Yeah.
And he's married and he won't leave, and he doesn't want to leave.
Yeah.
But 3 years ago he said he would leave and he would deal with things, what he needs to do, and come.
Which he hasn't done.
And I felt him all around me. I felt that. But I'm now questioning, is that out? My question was, is that...
I don't know if you want the answer yet, Caroline.
No, because it's quite obvious what...
I think
from
we've
what
answered
I've described,
you.
what the answer is.
Yeah, I think we've answered you, but you're a bit caught up in the story of it and not interested in the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No matter whether he's your soulmate or not, what I'm saying is that's not the person you're feeling.
No,
You're feeling the spirits who are giving you sexual feelings, and you're having sexual feelings, thinking it's him or his spirit
Right.
or his soul.
I can
And
feel
you're
the
actually
truth on
sharing
that.
it
Yeah.
with them.
Yeah, and that's why I felt to stop in the last 6, and that's why I was getting annoyed with it, because I was feeling didn't feel right. It didn't feel.
Yeah,
Correct.
but now you're still just in the story.
So now stop your story.
Yep.
So Mary, continue saying what you
Well,
want to
I
say.
think Jesus said it. Yeah, just that you're in a dynamic with spirits who are trying to get you to keep this fantasy about this guy,
so
because
that
it
you keep
opens
giving them
you-
sexual energy in the guise of them being this guy.
Yeah. And when you're around him, that in the past they might have gone, oh yeah, have some feelings also for Caroline.
And he is the kind of guy who will also do the same thing as these spirits.
Yeah.
He is the kind of guy who's incorrectly, he's married, but he's sharing sexual energy with you when he sees you. So that's off, right? Yep. So he's a very poor moral condition. Yep. But he's also doing the same thing as these spirits, taking advantage of you and taking advantage of the feelings he gets from you when he's with you. But when he's not with you, he can't feel you at all.
Yeah.
It's only when he's with you that he feels you.
He says he could, but obviously, maybe
Well, they
that's
obviously can't. Why is that obvious? Why should that be obvious to you? Wouldn't he feel the pain he's putting his other half through by doing this? Wouldn't he? Wouldn't he also feel, if he actually felt, wouldn't he also feel the pain that he's putting his marriage through by doing this?
Yeah, he has spoken about he does feel grief and shame, but he's obviously not. He feels it, but he's not feeling it. If that makes sense.
No. He's describing feelings to you, so you keep on the hook and
Thank you.
keep feeling the same things. And whether he's your soulmate or not is immaterial at this point, because at the end of the day, unless you deal with this and unless you deal with this going on, you're not going to be able to really feel what's going on for him, right? But it's also stopping you from having a relationship. These spirits obviously want you for themselves. So they want you to not have a relationship with anybody else, right? They want all of your sexual energy. See, some spirits come along and they want to share in sexual energy with a group of people. And then other spirits come along who have a strong sense of ownership, a strong sense of demand of control, which is exactly what blaming yourself gives them. And they want you totally. They want all of your sexual energy for themselves, right? Because they don't have that for themselves. So the trouble with the spirit who's doing this with you is that all he's doing, he is a he, right? And all he's doing is causing you to stay in a imaginary place so that you allow this energy to keep flowing and you keep giving him the same energy so that he feels good about himself. And while that continues to happen, how can you know this man is your soulmate? All he's got to do is just tell you that he is. He's an unavailable man, emotionally unavailable, sexually unavailable, and it's in the interest of this spirit to keep you on the hook about that, because while this spirit here, male, while this spirit here keeps you in that hook, you are going to be open to any sexual energy coming from him and to him. You're going to give him sexual energy while he keeps you in this hook that you believe he is him. You follow?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That answers it. Thank you. That's yeah. Thank you very much.
Yeah. And it all starts because of not dealing with this grief, and that attracts this kind of abusive male spirit who goes, I can take it. He's abusing you sexually.
So thank you. So it's working on going into the deep grief, looking at the principles of higher things.
Dealing with that grief.
Yeah. And
which you've been very frightened of dealing with your whole life, right?
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then obviously building up my self-worth to kind of.
It'll happen naturally.
Will it? Okay.
Yeah,
just by the grief going, it would happen.
Once you deal with this grief, there's no reason to blame yourself anymore.
Okay.
The purpose of the blame itself is to stop yourself from feeling grief. So once you feel the grief, there's no reason to blame yourself anymore. Once you stop blaming yourself, these kind of men will find it more and more and more difficult to connect with you. And as a result, you'll be able to tell, is this a real connection or is this actually just a connection based upon my blame of self?
Thank you. That's giving me hope. Thank you.
Yeah. A lot of talking in that from you.
I know, sorry.
And not a lot of listening.
No.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to seeing the recording so then I can really keep playing what you've said to me.
Yeah, well, you might have to blank out a lot of your words to hear mine.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
I'm just joking.
Why do I do that?
Well, you're afraid. You're afraid of dealing with this. And really you want a different story. You want a different answer. You want me to say, he is your soulmate, go for it.
No,
Break up
I'm
the relationship. Yeah, you do. Like, let's get honest with you. You do want to say, he's your soulmate, go for it. Trust your feelings, go for it. Break up the relationship. You know, take some proactive action so that his marriage breaks up or whatever, which I can't do, of course, because it would be unloving. But if you're honest with yourself,
feels yucky now.
Sorry?
It feels yucky now.
Yeah, well, it's starting to feel yucky, but this has been going on how many years?
16.
That's a long time before it felt yucky, right? Yep.
And also that your big panic, Caroline, is about the grief. So every time we bring you back to the grief, you
want to go off on another tangent.
Yeah.
You
Thank
understand?
you. Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Good day.